the quality is provided well, but I want to make sure we're also looking after taxpayers' interest in doing so.
Mishandling of fines and court costs turns justice on its head. I will ask how much oversight is taking place in these contracts and these third-party collection agencies and, third-party collection agencies. We will ask, is jailing over fines justified over common sense payment plans? I think that just, it makes all kinds of common sense to work on a payment plan versus jailing someone for inability to pay the fine. Then you add collection cost and those fines begin to multiply, and it really impacts those that have the least ability to pay for them. If I find that collections are unfairly compounded, I will not turn a blind eye to any unfair or improper fines.
As criminal court clerk, it's our duty to collect fines and fees, so I'm very aware of that. And persons who have been incarcerated in prison usually come out with no fines because they paid their financial dues to society. There's a problem, though. And the problem is that the outside collection agencies charge a percentage, and they charge fees, and it is tough on those people who have struggled or trouble just to pay the fees that they have. Unfortunately, within our government, our budgets have been cut to the point that we don't have the staff anymore within the court clerk's offices to do our own collections, where extra fees won't be charged and where people can be placed on payment plans. So as mayor, I will definitely look at that because it affects me, and I will look at it very seriously. Thank you.
Yes, it is a problem. I think I'd like to start with first applauding DA Funk for what he's now doing when, if cases are dismissed or charges are not pursued, he's expunging your record if your costs are waived because you're poor. I think that's a good step forward, and I applaud him for doing that. As mayor, it is one of those things where looking at our DA and our criminal court clerk and our public defenders and coming up with great ideas, I think that is a great idea worth pursuing. The other one is looking at potentially what other cities have done as well, calling it a day of Jubilee, is if you've had a certain amount of time or owe a certain amount of money, can we at one time just rescind those costs to get you back on your feet? There are some downsides of that, but that is an idea worth looking at. As mayor, that would be the type of creativity and thoughtfulness I'd bring to the table, and an idea we may pursue as a city. And I'm Jeremy Kane.
For me, this book was really eye-opening. I've always had the belief that once you went into prison and then you did your time, you came out and you had done it. You were free. And I clearly that's not the case, because what we do is we actually do charge people while they're in prison, and they do come out with debt. Huge amounts of debt. There was an article last week in the New York Times that talked about one gentleman who has over $4,500 in fees, and that's here in Nashville. And so the mayor doesn't control the court system, but the mayor absolutely controls the budget of the court system. And it is absolutely correct that judges have the ability to waive fees. But I think what they see is that so much of the court system is funded through those fees that they're reluctant to do so. As your next mayor, I will make sure that we are not putting fees on people such that our court system is paid on the backs of our poor. I will actually make sure my budget priorities are such that once you've done your time, you won't be asked to do it again.
The outsourcing concerns me less than the system in which we're saddling criminal defendants with criminal justice debt. So this is the beginning of that vicious cycle. We know that most of the folks who come through the criminal justice system are indigent or in poverty to begin with. We then saddle them with fines. That's harder for them to pay. Then we pursue collection and threaten to take away their driver's license, then which makes it harder for them to pursue or keep employment and pay the fines and be a productive member of society in the first place. So I'm certainly open to reviewing outsourcing, but I'm more interested in reviewing any or all programs that would say we're far more interested in helping somebody get back on their feet instead of perpetuating the vicious cycle that we know is causing these problems.
Yes, I'd have to agree. I think the outsourced private companies, we should always review, because what's important is they're serving us. We're the customer. And so by looking at making sure that their processes and goals are aligned with what we've asked them to do. But the other issue, which is being talked about, which is more important, is how these additional surcharges are spiraling out of control. I mean, there's stories of people that had $50 that turned into $200 in a matter of a little amount of time, which means they'd have to work 30 hours just to pay it back. And when they're on minimum wage and they need that money for other things, that's putting too much burden on that individual. And so I would like to make sure that we absolutely look at that, and that we do support the judges in Nashville who do have the option to literally make sure that the debt of poor defendants can be waived by the judge.
So since we have people in the reception area and in the sanctuary who cannot read your signs in front of you identifying your names, it probably is going to be helpful for each of the candidates to approve their message and state their name.
And that message was approved by Linda Eskin Riverbank. Thank you.
And I'm Bill Freeman.
Okay, third question. Ban the box policies which remove questions about criminal history from only the first step of the employment application process have been proven to help people with criminal records secure good jobs while simultaneously helping employers hire committed workers. In fact, the evidence that such policies provide a measurable benefit to the overall economy is so strong that more than 10 states and 60 cities and counties have already implemented a ban the box policy. Last year, the Metro Council considered but ultimately failed to enact such a policy with respect to Metro government. Both as mayor and as a candidate for mayor, would you support the proposed charter amendment that prohibits Metro from inquiring about a prospective employee's criminal history on an initial job application?
My name is Bill Freeman, and I strongly support banning the box, either by ordinance or by charter amendment here in Nashville. It robs men of their futures. It deprives them of the ability to work and businesses of manpower. Banning the box has been implemented in over 100 cities, 16 state governments, and 6 states have banned the box in private employment. It's time for Nashville to get on board.
You know, 1 in 4 adults have some type of criminal record. Oh, my name is Howard Gentry. I'm sorry. That was Bill Freeman. Really was. And the fact is that 1 in 4 have criminal records. And, you know, ban the box just gives you an opportunity to interview everyone. It gives you an opportunity to hear what the charge was and to be able to determine whether it's significant enough to not give a person an opportunity. You know, when I became criminal court clerk, we were expunging around 6,000 records a year. We're expunging about 30,000 a year, and what has occurred from that is when the people's records become clean, then they're able to move forward. They can get jobs, they can get housing. Well, this is the same as expungement. I mean, even though the record's there, you get an opportunity. And everyone deserves that opportunity. Everyone deserves a chance to re-enter our society and live as productive citizens. Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Kane. Is that on? And the short answer is yes. So the second step is, who can we look at and what can we learn from, or who can we learn from? Bill Lee, or Lee Company, is a great example of hiring folks who have come out of prison. I would call as mayor a community meeting and look to employers like that, and with folks that I got to visit with today from Project Return, and what are those best practices? What can we learn as a government, and what can we share with other businesses so that not only do we ban the box, but we also help give more people an opportunity to actually get that job. At Project Return today, I saw and heard about some great ideas and great plans about being able to offer some folks a welding degree. Well, that's great. We have a lot of construction projects. As mayor, I would use city incentives to support hiring of ex-convicts. That's a way that we can truly build a Nashville together. We can put our values in place and in work My name is Jeremy Kane, if you like that message.
So here's Megan Barry. So here is one of probably the most bizarre sentences I'm ever going to say. I agree with the Koch brothers. And hey, you can hiss. Usually that would be the response. But they actually last week moved toward banning the box in their company by saying that no longer were they going to ask that question on any of their employment. And I was shocked, but was in agreement, as I said, with the Koch brothers. So from my perspective, there are a couple of things. In 2012, the Metro Council did vote a resolution to say we should not do this. We asked the Civil Service Commission to enact it, and they didn't. So now where we are is we have the potential to put this on the ballot in August, which I hope everyone will sign that petition and we will do it. But as your next mayor, if it doesn't pass, I will make sure that I actually appoint commissioners on the Civil Service Commission who get it, and they will implement this as a policy.
When you consider that 1/3 or 1/4 of our applicant pool either has an arrest or a conviction, this goes back to this question we started with. Do we want to make it easier for people to get a job, or do we want to make it harder for people to get a job? Personally, I think it's the right thing to do. Even if you can't get on board that it's the right thing to do, I think you'll agree that it's the right thing to do from an economic standpoint. This is not some radical idea when you consider that more than 100 cities have approved this, and these radical cities like Charlotte and Austin and Indianapolis. I mean, come on, if they can do it, surely we can do it in Nashville. So if the question is, are you in favor of delaying a conviction inquiry until after we have qualified an applicant, then the answer is yes. I saw several people wearing Ban the Box t-shirts when I came in. If I can get my hands on one of those, I will wear it the next time I run on Belmead Boulevard. $15, you got it. Bone.
I'm Linda Eskin-Rebervic, and I encourage you all to sign that petition. It makes so much sense, and it's just part of the recruiting process that says everyone gets a fair chance. We should absolutely evaluate people based upon their skills, based upon how they handle the recruiting process. It is the right thing to do for people. The other thing to think about, it's not just that, it's also about pay. I found out that people that have been incarcerated and go back to work in the same job are being paid $15 less per day than they were paid before. That doesn't make any sense. So we really need to let that process go through, make sure that we don't have that box there, and that is going to happen in Nashville if I'm your mayor. Linda Rebervic.
The employment and career challenges of people released from prison is one of our biggest challenges in Nashville. But I think the proposal itself is more of a Band-Aid than a real solution to the problem. When I was chairman of the school board and serving on the school board, we had some real challenges having to do with background checks and sexual predator issues that were very scary. And that's what scares me about the proposal. And as prospective CEO of the city government, someone ultimately responsible for the hiring, I'm not real comfortable with the proposal. Having said that, if someone wishes to put it on the public referendum and the people of Nashville support it, then certainly I'll respect the wishes of the people of Nashville. Otherwise, I'd like to convene a group and find a real solution to the problem that Ms. Alexander details. This is a real problem for us. I think Ban the Box is interesting, but it doesn't really get to the core of the problem, and I think that's what the mayor's job is to do.
Next question. The criminal justice system is a grueling and painful experience for victims and offenders alike. In an effort to improve that problem, many jurisdictions have experimented with restorative justice programs that elevate and empower victims and remove the criminal justice system's focus from obtaining convictions to focus instead on repairing the harm that was caused by a criminal offense. Nashville, through its voluntary victim offender mediation program, is already engaged in restorative justice practices, but only on a very small scale. As mayor, will you initiate and support funding for a broad-based restorative justice programs in school and criminal courts that allow all victims of misdemeanor offenses the option of taking offenders to mediation before a district attorney proceeds with a prosecution?
Howard Gentry, and the answer is yes. And we are doing it, but it's very small. If you ever come to our courts on the first floor, it's like herding cattle. It's a terrible scene, and we're just moving people through the system, into jail, into probation, or wherever. But if we could just take a moment, and breathe, just a little space, and allow people to communicate before they are prosecuted, before they go through that system, I know that we would have different results. But we also should be able to do it after they go through the court system, because restorative is not just pre, but it could be post too. And if we do that within our government, within our system, then I know that the outcome will be better. Because right now, all we're doing is creating and criminalizing every act, even a misdemeanor, and that is just making our system just more fragile and almost impossible. Thank you.
My name is Jeremy Kane. This one is incredibly personal for me. My wife is an attorney, and she is a trained mediator. She has sat with people who right now are no longer in jail, or not in jail at all, but at jobs, because of that mediation. So I see it work, but also it's personal to me because there are students right now sitting in college because we brought peer-to-peer conflict resolution into our schools. As mayor, that will be something I will find the funding for every year to put that in every one of our high schools. And before I stepped aside as CEO, we started doing that in our middle schools as well. There are some powerful stories, but the most important and the most powerful stories is the fact that kids stayed in school. They found the ways to solve their problems, that we did not suspend them, we did not kick them out, we kept them in school, and right now they are sitting in college, they are on a very different career track. As mayor, that would be something I would fund and support, not only in our criminal justice system, but in our schools, so we catch kids early.
As Michelle Alexander points out in her book, which I never really realized because I haven't had a lot to do with the criminal justice system, is just how much power prosecutors have. And I think restorative justice is an excellent way for us to say, how do we support children and teenagers? And you notice I didn't call them juveniles. They're children and teenagers. And that is where we can start with restorative justice. A wise, very wise juvenile judge said to me a few weeks ago, we need to get our children out of orange jumpsuits and into standard school attire. And she means that literally in the jail system. Right now, those kids are in orange jumpsuits. If you have restorative justice programs, you are so much more likely to reduce recidivism and get those children back on track, and that takes resources. What I know that they need victim witnesses and they need mediators, and that takes money. And in my administration, that will be a priority.
This is something that I've had a lot of experience with in the civil context, almost overwhelmingly successful and positive experiences. What we have to keep in mind is that this is a voluntary program. Both the victim and the offender have to agree to this. And this is also equally as important for the victim as it is for anybody in this system, where we're asking the victim, how have you been harmed and what can we do to assist? I see Joe Engel here, who has forgotten more about this than most of us in this room will know. But if we are committed to being a restorative city and to perpetuating a culture of restoration, this is something that we have to expand in our criminal justice system, but we also have to make a major focus in our school system.
Linda Eskin-Rebrovic. There are many, many benefits to voluntary mediation. First of all, think of the cost. It is much less costly to go through mediation than to go through the court process. So that's a positive. Second, it is a great opportunity to bring everybody to the table. So the victim does get a chance to speak, and that is so important to that process for that individual. And the offender is spared an arrest record, and that is what we're focused on. So I believe and will be very supportive of voluntary mediation at every chance that we can bring that to bear. I think it is so, so important.
David Fox. Yeah, we've been very well served by our Nashville Conflict Resolution Center. It has helped us in many regards, handling a lot of the landlord-tenant disputes, juvenile custody and visitation issues. It's a perfect forum for that. I'd like to see us expand it. I'd like to see us kind of go carefully to make sure all these issues are appropriate for private adjudication. I'm not certain all misdemeanors are. They might be, but let's just take it identify one crime at a time and just see how it works. One good thing I like about it especially, it frees up the bandwidth of our criminal courts to get the priorities straight. You know, right now we are, as Ms. Alexander chronicles, we are hyper-criminalizing, young people doing trivial things. I think it's kind of a sick mispriorities. In the meantime, we're letting people who shoot people out with no time at all. I ran into somebody in law enforcement long ago was pulling his hair out. How can we be doing this to young people doing trivial things and letting people who shoot people out without a mandatory minimum for shooting people? Sorry about that. Thanks.
That was easy for you to say.
Not so much.
We have seen that restorative justice works, Bill Freeman, in misdemeanor cases. We know that our jails and prisons are packed. We need to reduce crowded court dockets, and this is a great way to do it. Let's compare results from existing mediation programs to recidivism rates, and that should point us in the right direction, but my inclination would be that this is a good idea and something we need to pursue.
Next question. In 2013, 39% of vehicle stops in Nashville and nearly 50% of Nashville adult drug arrests were of African Americans, despite the fact that African Americans make up just 28% of Nashville's overall population. Similarly, the Department of Justice's report on law enforcement practices in Ferguson, Missouri, indicated that 85% of Ferguson's vehicle stops and 93% of its total arrests were of African Americans, while African Americans represented only 67% of Ferguson's total population. These statistics paint a comparable picture, that African Americans are dramatically overrepresented in both vehicle stops and drug arrests, even though there is no evidence that African Americans commit traffic infractions or drug offenses at a rate greater than their white counterparts. Do you see this as a problem? And if so, what would you do as mayor to address these disparities?
My name is Jeremy Kane, and yes, I've ridden along with police officers in almost every police precinct, and we have good, caring police officers. But too often they talk about what they see out there and where they are going. I think we need to have even more transparency around our data. If you have not gone to a CompStat meeting, you should, because all the data is there. But how do we find a way to get that out into the public? We have great community officers, but we need to share that even more, because the police officers that I speak with want to be accountable, want to learn, and want to hear from the community. Second piece of this is, how do we create a police force that looks like Nashville? I was involved in education, and we couldn't just overnight go find more African American males to teach. We decided to launch a 10-year program to partner with TSU and Fisk and Vanderbilt. It will take time, because when we were converting Cameron Middle School with a large Coptic population, a lot of religious holidays fall on Friday. There aren't any Coptic police officers. Many of our kids were picked up for truancy because you didn't have a police force that looked like Nashville. Dang, I could have kept going.
As Ms. Alexander says in her book, police have the greatest discretion when they are deciding who's going to be a criminal. And that's where racial profiling starts, because we can absolutely see that the people who are targeted are African American, and our stats bear that out. And there are two components that I believe are really vital. One is transparency. President Obama has set aside federal funds for body cameras. I support that. I want us to go after those federal funds, and I want our police to be accountable, not only so that we have a record of what happened on either side, but so that we have the data so we can see what's happening with stops. I also believe in accountability. We have an Office of Accountability, and that Office of Accountability sits outside of the police department, and they are, in theory, tasked with making sure that those police stops are done in a way that are acceptable. But I will tell you that the data isn't as transparent as it needs to be. We have it, but we need to know it so we can act on it.
I do believe that the overrepresentation in traffic stops and drug arrest is absolutely an issue. However, I think some of the comparisons to Nashville and Ferguson are a bit unfair. If you look at the Justice Department report that was cited, what they found was that Ferguson law enforcement practices are directly shaped and perpetuated by racial bias. I do not believe that that is necessarily the issue in Nashville. This is a national problem that has occurred for decades and that is highlighted by Ms. Alexander's book. The Justice Department report gives us a new opportunity as we begin to look at our police departments and we begin to look at our judicial system to see the impact of racial profiling, of discrimination, and other forms of racial injustice. However, it would be a mistake and a missed opportunity to stop just at traffic and just at drug arrest and not look at housing and education and employment and finance and health care. That would be a missed opportunity from the horrific incidents we see happening today. We should use that as the opportunity.
Linda Eskin-Rebervic. We are very, very fortunate to have a police force and leadership that is working very hard through programs like ComStat to review every single bit of data that they can. But any organization, just like any business, can improve. And so I know that our police force would be very happy to do two things. One is review the processes that are being used to make sure there's an objective review process of everything that happens by an independent group of people who represent the diversity of our city. We don't want Baltimore to happen here. And one of the most interesting things is you always see leading indicators. And that Baltimore Sun reported that Baltimore has spent $6 million in settlement cost for police misconduct suits. Secondly, I do agree that we have to have a police force that represents the diversity of our city.
This is David Fox. Several months ago, the son of one of my closest friends who's African American was driving in an adjacent county and noticed a police officer pulled behind him. And he drove carefully for the first mile. Police officer stayed behind him for a second mile and then a third mile. And then when he shifted lanes, apparently turned his blinker on a little bit too late or something, he was pulled over and told to stay in the car while they called the canine force. The dog went around the car once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. On the 5th time, the dog found a cup on which there was some residue of marijuana in a car that was not even my friend's car. He spent a month in jail. He's on probation for a year. And this college kid now has to find a job, get older, find a spouse. You know, we're better than this, folks. Believe me, I'll take this as a top priority. We'll take care of this problem.
We can do a better job in Nashville. The Nashville statistics are troubling, but we're not a Ferguson, Missouri. We can do a better job. We are doing a better job. This isn't what Nashville is all about. I believe in the men and women that work in our Nashville Police Department. I believe that they're doing a good job. I repeat, we are not a Ferguson. Nashville, Tennessee is a different city, a different place. Our police exhibit the kind of good community policing that was utterly absent in Ferguson. I'm also open to the community advisory panel composed of both police officers and citizens, and think that that could be a good way to monitor what's going on in our police department.
I'm Howard Gentry. We're not a Ferguson. We're not a Baltimore. We're none of those cities yet. But if we look at those figures, if we look at those percentages, that can happen overnight in Nashville, Tennessee. It can happen, and please, the fact is that if you look in our jails, 60% of the persons in our jail system are people of color. 60% of the people in the Tennessee prison are people of color. It can happen, people, and we cannot ignore it. We just had a domestic violence forum last night, and we have created a domestic violence court, and we have said we're going to stop this. Well, we have to do the same thing as it relates to disparities, racial disparities in our criminal justice system, and we've got to stop it. Thank you.
Next question. As the next mayor of Nashville, how will you address the root causes of crime?
Megan Barry, and I wish I could sit here and tell you that I have identified all the root causes of crime and that I've got solutions, but I don't. But I can tell you what it means to me and what the key steps are when we talk about reducing crime and improving everybody's quality of life. For me, it means working on a housing-first strategy that makes sure that we get men and women into housing, because if you're in housing, then you're not being criminalized for being homeless. It means improving our education system so that everybody has universal pre-K. It means better access to good-paying jobs so that through economic investment and strategies, local workers can actually have access to jobs that are being funded by their tax dollars. And it means making sure that we have affordable housing throughout Nashville so that working families can still live here. But you didn't need me to have that list for you. You know that's what we need to do. What we need, though, is a mayor who's going to step up and make those a priority. And that's what I'll do.
So it doesn't take a sociologist to understand that the root causes of crime are lack of education opportunities and lack of employment opportunities, both of which manifest themselves as a result of poverty. What keeps me up at night is two things. One, what's happening to our children after school, on afternoons, nights, weekends, summers, as well as what's happening to the 2,500 students that will fall out of the system between 9th grade and 12th grade and enter the non-working class. I think as a city we have to stand up and say both of these groups are important to the future of Nashville. We have to pursue more effective after and out-of-school programming to capture those students, and we have to pursue a summer jobs program that leads to an internship program that leads to permanent employment if we are serious about tackling poverty and ultimately serious about tackling crime.
There's no one single bullet to this solution. We need a holistic approach. And I'm going to be focused on, instead of a school-to-prison pipeline, a cradle-to-career pipeline. It is just so important that we think about the fact that by the time, and your ability to judge, your ability to read in 4th grade, and where we stand is how prisons determine how many people are going to be in their prison in 10 years. So we have to start at a very early age, from birth to 3, and make sure that our children can read, make sure they go into school, make sure they have aftercare. Some of the greatest programs I have seen are in the schools, are like NASA and Top Floor, where children stay in the schools after school, where they're safe, where they're learning, where they're with mentors, where they're able to then get to college. And it's then about jobs, making sure they have the skills and prepared for jobs.
It's David Fox. There's nothing more highly correlated with involvement with crime than a lack of success in education. After school is important, as is pre-K, quite important. But what gets kids out of poverty is what happens in the classroom. And we know this from places all over the country. And what I've learned when I was chairman of the school board, there's really no one more critical in the delivery of great education than having an engaged mayor who understands why public education is not delivering the quality service we want, but also importantly understands what's the appropriate role for the mayor to make sure we get it. When we have mayors who are engaged, expend political capital like Mayor Dean, we see results. You know, our school board is not historically always effective. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And when it isn't, children pay for it for the quality of their lives, even their lives themselves. Well, as mayor, I can assure you that'll be my job number one. I'm quite optimistic. We can have a great educational system here over the next 5 or 10 years, and I look forward to the chance to make that happen.
David, you're exactly right. It's all about education and jobs. The higher the employment rate, the lower the crime rate. that's just common sense. But the more jobs, the lower the crime rate. And the more education, the better our public education system is, the higher the employment rate is. I've said that I'll be a one-man chamber of commerce. I want to bring more jobs back into Davidson County. I've told you that Williamson County is the #1 job growth county in America, fourth quarter last year. Rutherford County was the #2 fastest growing job growth county in the country. Nashville wasn't even the top 10. I'll change that. I'll get our chamber more focused on Davidson County, and that will improve a number of things, but primarily the unemployment rate and the crime rate, lower the crime rate.
Howard Gentry, when we think about the root causes of crime, you think about a root, so you think about the children. Children, those kids are not creating crimes. They're not robbing and killing, and it's the parents. It's the adults, and the root cause is the failure of our criminal justice system. The root cause is our sentencing laws. The root cause is the fact that people who do get in trouble are not able to get out of trouble and get their lives restored. So what happens is they continue to stay within the system. They just keep the revolving door going, so they can't be the dads that they need to be. They can't be the moms that they need to be. They can't be productive citizens because we are incriminating them on every step. We're going to have to work hard on not the children, so to speak, but the people who raise these children and make them better, make them whole, and the children will be better.
I'll be a little different. It's not just about education, and it's not just about transit, and it's not just about housing. It's about the connections between each and every one of those issues. And as mayor, I've said it at every forum, the first day in office, I will hold a cabinet meeting. The head of MDHA does not work for me. The new superintendent of schools does not work for me. But we will have a cabinet meeting my first day in office to set the tone and to set the practice that all of these issues are connected, and we are one city that will tackle these issues together. One project that I want to tackle within the first year is the redevelopment and revitalization of Casey. This is an example that brings together all of these issues, where if we do this the right way, in a way that brings Nashville together, we have schools that are connected with Martha O'Brien, that are on a transit line, that have housing support, that have job support. This is how we truly reconnect Casey with the East Nashville, with the booming economy in downtown. If we do that the right way, the next step is in Edge Hill, the next step then is in Napier. That is truly a Nashville together.
Here's the last question, and each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond. As mayor, what is your vision for mitigating the effects of the new Jim Crow as described by Michelle Alexander?
Bye.
Mark, we have a...
Do you need here?
Okay, we have a substitute.
Nope. How do I turn that one on? Hello?
Has his time been running?
No.
Come on.
Test. One,
There we
two.
go. Okay.
Hello?
There you go.
Hello?
All right.
Now I'm afraid to touch anything. I've got like 12 seconds left. The problem, as I understand it, is 1 out of every 6 black men have either died prematurely or are in prison. 70% of those who are in prison are there for nonviolent offenses. The New York Times, just in the last 10 days, has referred to this epidemic, building off of the book that we all read in advance of tonight, as the 1.5 million missing black men. But in addition to those that are physically missing, we know there's also some that are functionally missing. That while they're not in prison, they cannot access the workforce because either the low-level skilled jobs are not there, or because they've been saddled by racial discrimination, or because they have criminal convictions. Why does this matter? It matters because of the anger that you articulated at the beginning of tonight, what we see in Baltimore. If you look at the neighborhood where this started, Sandtown, they are burdened by both those that are physically missing as well as those that are functionally missing. They have the largest per resident prison population of any census tract in the state of Maryland. Their unemployment rate is 52%. 61% of the people do not have a high school diploma. There is hope. When you see people like these champions of progressive thinking like Rand Paul, Mike Lee, Grover Norquist, Newt Gingrich, and the Koch brothers step forward, Victor Hugo said sometimes there's nothing more powerful than an idea whose time has come. That time has come, which is why we're here tonight. As a city, we have to do everything we can to support front-end reform and do everything we can to push reducing mandatory sentencing and continuing to reform that. But as a city, we have to step forward and say that we're also interested in back-end reform. We have to say as a city that we are going to support organizations like Project Return, and to have a mayor that champions that and brings along all of those who care about these issues to champion the work that they are doing, and to say as a city, part of our workforce development strategy is keeping people from returning to prison. I'm Charles Robert Bone, and I'd appreciate your vote.
Black lives do matter, and we are all angry. And what I would tell you is that we, as your mayor, I will make sure that we treat people with drug addiction with the understanding that it is a sickness. And we need to help them, not lock them up. I look at Renewal House, which is a wonderfully successful organization that my husband, Art Rebrovic, helped found. And what he saw in the juvenile court system, with many others, was that we were taking the mothers away from their children. Well, that split in the family was not good for anybody. And guess what was going to happen to those children? They were going into foster care. And so they created Renewal House. And today, the mothers stay with the children. They're in there for 2 years. We need to be doing the exact same thing. Help people who have a drug addiction, not lock them up. The second thing is we've got to look at how we are incentivizing. According to this book, we are incentivizing police to arrest people. That is not the right metric. We need to be incentivizing them to drive people to safety. Nashville is a phenomenal city, but we do have the risk that something could happen here like has happened in other cities. As your mayor, I am going to make sure that if the drug addiction is, and this serious illness is dealt with, and that we do it just like we've done it in other places, bringing public-private partnership together. I am the most qualified to be your next mayor to bring these experiences to bear on day one. I'm Linda Eskin-Rebrovic, and I'm asking for your vote. Thank you.
David Fox. I assume that most of you, like all of us, have read the book, The New Jim Crow. And I suspect you, like myself and probably everyone up here, found it to be one of the most deflating and infuriating books I've ever read before, because the thesis is true. There's really no escape. As far as what was the motivation behind the war on drugs starting 35, 40 years ago, I don't know what the original intent was necessarily, but I sort of know where we are now. I think we all know what the results are now. We've seen a hugely and unacceptable disparate impact among the races. And we know it's not fair, it's not right, it's certainly not what we think of Nashville, it's not our way of life. So looking at it, I'll let the sociologist like Mr. Cornfield over there, he can figure out, do all the autopsy of how we got here. But as a prospective civic leader here, I want to focus on what we do about it now. I think it's a moral imperative that we change this, and if we don't change this, it's on us. So shame on us if we don't take this on and fix the actual underlying causes of the problem. When we think how kind of our constitutional system has really been corrupted in this, it's pretty astonishing. Searches without really genuine probable cause. I mean, who would have thought that would have happened? I probably would never have guessed we would have reached that point. Providing financial incentives to law enforcement for drug arrests, with the expected result, everyone should have known what the results have been. Asset seizures, asset forfeitures, loss of voting rights. You know, people should have had more sense than this. Well, as mayor, I want to go after these. These are the root causes. These are the underlying causes. And so I want to use all the influence and authority I have as mayor to make the legislative changes to change the system itself. I don't want to go around the edges. I want to go full force at the problem.
Racism and intolerance have been the greatest threat to America in our history. The centuries of slavery, the decades of Jim Crow, and now the unspoken bigotry of mass incarceration threaten to make the promises of our Declaration of Independence a lie. What will I do? I'll demand accountability and transparency in metropolitan government from top to bottom. There are many good reasons to end mass incarceration: the cost, the unintended victims, the children, the family members, the distraction from important work that government could be doing. But there is one best reason: because it goes against our humanity. I want to be your next mayor because I can help make sure that your government is one you can trust to do the right thing. Thank you for bringing us together here tonight. It's been a great evening, enlightening to me, and I hope to many of you. And I'll close by saying this: it's unfair that in this great country, African American men are more likely to be charged with crimes and sentenced to longer prison terms. This must end, and I will do all that I can as mayor to end it. Thank you.
I'm Howard Gentry, and I want to thank you in advance for having us here today and have this discussion. As much as I want to be angry right now, I'm actually excited. I think about when I was a little boy in Nashville and could not do the things I do today and was not treated the way I'm treated today. I remember a room looking just like this, people looking just like you. They decided that it wasn't going to happen anymore. And you made that decision, and Nashville changed, and Nashville grew, and I grew with Nashville, and I was able to become your vice mayor. Well, here we are again today. The room looking just like it did when I was a young boy. And just knowing that this room is not going to stand for what has been taking place in this city for these years, I feel good, I feel excited that a change is going to occur. I've already met with the police chief, sheriff, judge, DA, public defender, the mayor, the stakeholders in the criminal justice system, and they all want to see these percentages change. They all want it to get better. When I become mayor of Nashville, I'm going to put these people together and create a criminal justice commission. We're going to study the causes, and after we get through studying what we already know, we're going to go into action. We're going to make a change, and we're going to all do it together. And I'm excited about the fact that it's going to happen August the 6th. So please elect me your mayor, and let's do this together. Thank you.
We've talked about a lot of the challenges in Nashville, but I think it's important, and I want to end with a conversation about Nashville at our best. Because when my father lost his job as a minister almost 15 to 20 years ago, he was helped out. My family stayed in our house because a black man he met in Sevier Park helped him get a job at the Green Hills Y. When that wasn't enough to keep us in our house and pay our bills, a homeless gentleman my father had helped get back on his feet by starting a Room in the Inn program, helped him get a second job renting cars at the airport. That is truly Nashville at our best. We see it in our nonprofit community and our faith community. As we think about those things that disconnect us from one another, and Nashville is right with that history, as mayor, I'm going to approach this as how can we reconnect our communities? How can we use our schools so that it is about true school choice, not about the type of school, but about giving parents the choice through transportation, through housing, through high-paying jobs. When we think about I-40 and cutting across and disconnecting a community, I am going to be the mayor that thinks creatively, much like Charlotte or Barcelona or Madrid, where we could build parks and space above the highway so that we can reconnect a community. So our investment in Jefferson Street is not just a police department, but it could be a museum and public space where we all, black and white, brown and other, come together and connect as families. Most importantly, it's about transit, about giving everybody not just an option of a bus, but access to an opportunity. As mayor, I am running to build a Nashville together. It is not just going to be my ideas alone. It will not just be my 4 and 8 years in office. This is something that 30 years from now, when my daughter is 33 and she hopefully chooses to call Nashville home, that she can still send her kids and grandkids to the school of her choice. That she can live in a neighborhood that is safe and connected. And most importantly, she can contribute to the continuing success of Nashville. My name is Jeremy Kane. I look forward to earning your vote.
This book has done a really great job, I think, of laying out what is a systemic way that the criminal justice system has failed African Americans in this country. From rounding people up, to incarcerating them, to relegating them as second-class citizens once they get out. And it's by design. And I'll be generous. White America has sat back and been passive. But we can start to mitigate some of these new Jim Crow by acknowledging first that race is a factor. It's a huge factor. It's a huge factor in the creation of our criminal codes. It's a huge factor in how we arrest offenders, and it is a huge factor in when we sentence offenders. The truth is that a lot of the problems that are outlined in this are beyond the scope of your next mayor. We don't have the power over the federal war on drugs, and we don't control the straight criminal codes or the sentencing guidelines, but that is no excuse. Because in Davidson County, we can remove as much bias as possible with our power. And we can do that by being a city that is not going to profit on the misfortune of those who've made a mistake, by trapping them in the endless cycle of fines and fees and debt. We can adopt restorative justice programs in our schools and in our criminal justice system so that we are solving problems and not creating new ones. We can create accountability within our police department so that the public can have the confidence that we need, that our police are here to protect all of us. I'm running to be the next mayor because I have a progressive vision for Nashville, because I see what's possible. Good jobs that pay fair wages, quality education that it doesn't matter what your zip code is, a transit system that will take you where you need to go, and a city of equality and affordability. That's what's possible. That's our city. We can do that now, together. My name is Megan Berry, and I ask for your vote, and I hope I can earn it on August 6th. Thank you.
Now, join me in thanking all of our candidates. So before we leave tonight, let me first thank the Temple for hosting us this evening. This is a great event. I'd also like to thank the Nashville Campaign to End the New Jim Crow for sponsoring this, along with its co-sponsors, A Voice, the American Civil Liberties Union, the Children's Defense Fund, Project Return, and the Tennessee Alliance for Progress. In the reception area, you can sign up for future New Jim Crow events. You can also sign a petition to ban the box, to support the Ban the Box Charter Amendment, and you can meet with the candidates. The Nashville Campaign to End the Jim Crow encourages everyone to vote, and thank you for coming tonight, and good evening.
Oh, yeah.